welcome to the Build Your Bankroll podcast. Welcome back. We're so glad to have you. Happy New Year. What an awesome start to the year for everyone. We're going to start it off to look back at some college football playoff action from last weekend. Here with prolific Puck and myself, the understudy, just checking in. We want to rehash Michigan versus TCU first.
Yeah, this was kind of a crazy game. You know, TCU jumped out right out of the gate up 21-6. Really kind of shocked Michigan and put them on their heels right from the jump in this game. And then the explosive third quarter, we had 44 points that were scored in the third quarter. I don't think anybody saw that coming. The first half pace at 27 points was, pretty much right on pace with what that total was at. But then the third quarter, they just blew it out of the water. Both teams were scoring left and right. We had some pick sixes. We had turnovers. We had deep plays. We had big runs. We had everything in that third quarter. And then Michigan got within 3 to start the fourth. But TCU, they scored 10 straight after that and pretty much sealed the deal. And kind of shocked me. You guys heard me last week. I was on Michigan. I thought they were going to win the game. I thought they were going to win the game going away. I didn't think TCU was going to be able to score 30 points, let alone
nice
51.
Try, prolific.
So
later,
yeah.
prolific.
Exactly.
Meanwhile, understudy was on plus 7.5 TCU. And I said it last week, but the thing that I loved was Quentin Johnston again, the 6'4" stud. I said that nobody could guard that guy. I was right. He absolutely demolished the game, and I think he's going to do it again upcoming. But, I loved everything I saw out of TCU, and Duggan was just a firepower as well. But, Michigan couldn't contain. I thought it was a fun game to watch.
I'll say for myself, too, what blew me away was I talked about the offensive and defensive lines for Michigan, and TCU put 263 yards on them. DeMarcado had 150 of them. So it really surprised me with how much they ran the ball on them. Coming in, I thought they were going to be a pretty formidable passing team. And, looking forward at the game, we may have to cap some stuff there for the title game. But just running on them, it absolutely shocked me.
No doubt. It was a shocking occurrence, I think, for pretty much all of us. Georgia, Ohio State. Look, I'll be the first to say I thought Georgia's defense was ready for an Ohio State offense. C.J. Stroud is an elite passer. He was fantastic, almost flawless, really, if you think about it. Georgia got crushed. I mean, absolutely crushed as far as just points allowed. Obviously coming victorious, but Stetson Bennett, the 12th, I'll tell you what, that guy has a way to win. And, I don't know if you guys remember, there's a point in the season where somehow they got Stetson Bennett's personal number. And the first time he got in the end zone, I can't remember what game it was, but literally made the mark of, oh, call me, and like put the headphone by his head. It was awesome. But he shows that he is a true high-caliber quarterback that knows how to play in high-pressure situations. And, man, he was impressive. That was probably, one of the best performances I've seen out of him.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually all over this game. I knew there was going to be a lot of points. Understudy, I don't think you thought the Ohio State offense could put up the points that they did. And I said the key to this game was going to be C.J. Stroud using his legs, and he absolutely did that. He ran the ball 12 times. I didn't go back and look at every game, but I can almost guarantee you he never ran the ball 12 times this season. He got some key first downs, and that really gave Ohio State a shot that they wanted. They just couldn't execute the kick at the end, but fantastic game, tons of points. That game kind of played out the way I thought that it would.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I was totally misread. I thought that the Georgia cornerbacks were going to show up. And to be honest, they got diced in every facet, right? I mean, Ohio State wide receivers, they are no joke. They're the real deal. They showed that last weekend. So,
And I was going to say, too, I think the committee got it right. I think those were the 4 best teams. I don't see any of those other teams, especially like UCLA, or not UCLA, USC, getting beat in their bowl game by Tulane. I mean, that was a shock to me as well. But ultimately, I think the committee got all 4 of them right. Again, I was on this with Prolific as well. I was on the over 533 yards given up by Georgia, 135
That's insane
rushing.
in itself.
Yeah,
Insane.
135 rushing, 398 passing. Stroud went to work on the Georgia defense.
And those rushing yards that Ohio State racked off, no Mayan Williams, no E.J. Henderson. I mean, it was not their big dogs. It was Dalen somebody and Xavier Johnson. So, I mean, it was 2 guys who, you're not used to seeing in the backfield for the Buckeyes running, ripping off those runs.
No doubt. So I guess we have no choice but to lead into the national championship game, the big daddy of them all. We now have TCU facing Georgia. Any opening thoughts, fellas?
So for me, I'll jump in and break down, TCU and Georgia first. We've got, Georgia is favored by 12.5 here, with a total of 62.5. 12.5 is a lot of points in a national championship game. I'm not sure there's ever been a spread this large in this type of a game. But looking at 2 touchdowns almost, with a total at 62.5, I'm a little bit surprised at the number. And I think the most shocking performance in the semifinals was the TCU offense. I didn't think they could hang with the Michigan defense. And I think what that tells me is they can hang with the Georgia defense. TCU's defense, they played about the way that I thought they would. They gave up 45 points, well over 500 yards. I'm expecting Georgia to do the same. Georgia's easily going to score 40, 50 points in this game. I don't think that's going to be a problem. So you guys can kind of already tell the way I'm leaning, but those are kind of my thoughts. Georgia really didn't have a problem either, moving the ball on Ohio State, throwing for 400 yards. They didn't run the ball that great, but they really didn't need to. Stetson Bennett was just amazing. 400 yards in the air, 3 touchdowns. I see a lot of points in this game. I'll get into more here in a little bit, but what do you guys think?
I'm going to stick
on the same bet as you.
Sorry, go ahead, Puck.
That's all right. I was just going to say I'm on the same thing. I'm on the over 62.5 for basically all the same reasons. The one other thing that I was going to say is TCU, they're from obviously the Big 12. They're known for giving up points. There's not a lot of defense in that conference as it is. I think Georgia's going to do the same thing. I mean, they put up 40-some points on Ohio State. I think they're going to do the same thing to TCU. And then I think TCU, they can attack those defensive backs yet again. So I'm on the same thing. 1 unit, 62.5. Let's get this thing rolling.
Yeah, one thing to think about in the games from last week, Georgia got down, right? And then you also had Michigan that got down. And I think that changed the context of the game. No doubt. I mean, we didn't expect a shootout through the roof. That was crazy. But I don't know that this game is going to be just firepower type that we saw in the opening contest. One thing that I think is important to note, though, is Duggan is exceptional when he throws passes of 20 yards or more, one of the best in the country at that. And this is an area where really Georgia has struggled. Historically, they've been great in the secondary, but I don't know. I think this is going to be an exposed spot for the Georgia defense. So that does worry me a little bit about on the point side, but I don't have a play on the total at all.
Yeah, I think the one thing that we handicapped in the Ohio State Georgia game was C.J. Stroud using his legs. Max Duggan is absolutely going to use his legs, and he's absolutely going to make Georgia cover the entire field. So, I definitely see that as an advantage to TCU. And TCU, quite frankly, they've got a better running back than either of the 2 running backs that Ohio State had out there. So, he's going to be solid. Amari DiMarcado, he had well over 100 yards against Michigan. I don't know that he'll go over 100 against Georgia. I do see Duggan really having to win this game through the air. He had a good game.
Number 2 back, right? The primary back, I think, is out.
He is. But DeMarcado,
But he's awesome.
I mean,
yeah, he's great.
Yeah, he looked fantastic against Michigan.
And he broke a big one on him too, 69-yarder against Michigan. So he's got the ability to take it to the house from anywhere.
Yeah, that is actually a good point, Puck, because if you think about the rushing yards that he had, I think he had 130, 140 yards rushing. And if one of them was on one big run, that means, the rest of his yards or the rest of his rushes didn't amount to much. But he did look good. I think TCU is going to be able to run the ball a little, and I think that's all they need to be able to do is just run it just a bit, just to get Georgia to respect it and open up those passing lanes. Yeah,
and I think back to the Georgia corners. Ringo is one of those guys that is one of the most penalized corners, in college football, and he's somebody that they can work across, as Ohio State did. More importantly, I know I said it earlier, but I just want to reiterate, I don't think there's a matchup for Quentin Johnston. He absolutely did damage against Michigan, and I see him doing the same against Georgia. So once again, my play would definitely be on the current TCU plus 12.5. I think it's a lot of points for Georgia to cover it at 12.5. So I'm on the TCU side of this as well. Any final thoughts, gentlemen, with the national championship game?
Yeah, just to give you my plays in this game, I'm looking at it, a couple of different ways. First I'm going to take the over. So just straight up 1 unit over 62.5. I don't think that's going to be enough points for this. I did go back and look at some previous championship games, and of the 8 championship games that we've had, 2 of the 8 didn't get to 60 points. So 6 of the 8 games went over 60. This game's at 62.5. I think we're going to get over that. It's kind of been the trend in these championship games. You have to have a top tier offense to get to this game. Both of these teams obviously have that. So I'm going to take the over. And then the second thing, I think 12.5 is too much for TCU, but rather than doing that, I'm going to tease TCU up to 18.5, and then I'm going to play the over at 56.5. So take that 6-point teaser, give yourself a little bit more cushion with TCU up to 18.5 points. That gets you through 2 key numbers of 14 and 17, get you to 18.5, and then over 56.5. I obviously think they're going to go well over that.
That's a smart play. I like that.
Listen, guys, I'm here to bring us the first piece of disappointment and the first false hope. Daddy's home was going to be our featured guest today. Daddy is not home. And, look, we get it. Things happen. We're a little disappointed. Thanks, Daddy. Thanks for letting down the team here at BYBR. But he is out in San Diego, very excited to be on next week, and we'll bring him back into the scene. But until that time, it is only appropriate for Prolific. Drop some knowledge on him.
Thanks, understudy. So this week we're going to be talking to you about juice. You guys spoke on Twitter, and this was by far the topic that you guys wanted to hear about. So juice is another name for the VIG, which is the cut or amount charged by a sports book for taking a bet. The sports book only collects the juice if the bettor loses the wager. For example, a point spread is often listed with minus 110 odds. And what that means is you've got to bet $110 to win 100. And as you'll start to log into these various different sports books, you're going to see odds all over the place. We've got parlays, we've got money lines, we've got all different types of bets. So we're here. We're going to introduce a couple of those different types of bet to you. So understudy, take it away.
Yeah, I want to talk about the parlay for a second. And here's the deal. Parlays are fun. Don't get me wrong, but don't think that you're making a life savings out of this, because it is a huge risk. Simply parlay has to be more than one outcome. Think of it that way. So At least two different things have to be happening, whether we're talking over under, whether we're talking money line, whatever it may be. But let me throw out an example that I thought this is kind of interesting. You want to talk about odds? How about this one? 31,847 to 1 odds. This truly happened. A sports bettor in New York turned a $6.90 16-team parlay into $219,746 at Caesars Sportsbook. The New York State bettor picked the money line on 9 baseball games and a run line and had 4 NHL playoff plays and an additional 2 NBA playoff games. Are you freaking kidding me? Man, would that be nice to rip some money like that. Just understand parlays are high risk, high reward. But in most cases, they don't end favorably. But we'll get more into the parlay as time goes on. But it is a fun bet. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, and I'll say, too, I bet a lot of hockey, as you know. And the money line, a lot of people say it's juiced up, right? It'll be anywhere from minus 170, minus 250, somewhere in that ballpark. But, you know, sometimes just the better team is going to win. And for example, as we're recording this tonight, I bet on the Washington Capitals to win outright on the money line against the Columbus Blue Jackets at minus 220. The juice in that instance was worth the squeeze, as they say. So the other one, I mean, it's kind of the same thing, but second period overs, oftentimes, you know, if you kind of get a little feel for how the game's going, the odds will be over under 1.5 goals. And certainly if there are a lot of shots in the game, that kind of a thing, again, it could be juiced up minus 150 to 220. And again, I'll sometimes jump on it. I'll let these guys know, Prolific and Understudy, hey, I think this would be a good time to take it. So again, I'll repeat it. The juice sometimes is worth the squeeze. With that said, Understudy, you want to take us home?
Episode 2 in the books. From Prolific, Puck, and myself, the Understudy. Thanks so much for checking in. We really appreciate it. This is the stuff we love to do. Coming from 3 locations throughout the United States, it's just fun to put stuff together. And as I mentioned last week, we are Twitter virgins, but I'm learning on a personal level, I'm also Twitter illiterate.
Man, that was something. We had a rough week there. I wish everyone could see our group chat there because we were just ripping the Understudy on his tweets and what accounts they were coming from. It was just a complete nightmare. So thanks for sticking with us. Appreciate all the following and all that stuff that you're doing, but we'll get there. We'll be better.
And if you saw tweets being deleted from our BYBR podcast account, you knew who was deleting them.
Okay, that's enough, fellas. Understood. I've got work to do in the Twitter world. Hey, listen, I'll welcome some new followers. Just let me know. You know, we'll get there. I want to give you my New Year's resolution to ease things out here. I am currently, and no shame, I'm sitting at 241.5 pounds. I'm much bigger than I've ever been in my entire life. I'm beluga whale status right now. Not gonna sugarcoat it. I want to get down to gazelle status. Smooth, nice and slender and healthy. I'm going to get there. I'm going to stay positive. I know I can do it. So whatever your New Year's resolutions are, get out there, get it done, and get after it. Once again, we thank you so much for tuning in to episode 2. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on wherever you get your podcast at BYBR Podcast, at Prolific_BYBR, at Puck_BYBR, at Understudy_BYBR. Thanks again. Have a great week. We look forward to seeing you next week.